And as we're letting people stream in to each of the panelists, you didn't know I was going to ask you a question, but do you want to share kind of your background, but also something interesting about yourself that may not be on social media or your resume?
Brooke, do you want to go first, or do you want me to, or?
I'll have you go first. I'm sure you're much more interesting than I
I'm
am.
happy to. So Ryan Huckabee, I lead commercial sales at Data Robot. I came up as a BDR, then mid-market rep, then enterprise rep, then an RD in the territory space. So a pretty standard software sales trajectory. I worked in system integrators for a little while, so have some channel exposure also. Let's see, something interesting about me. Gosh knows. I'm obsessed with cars. Like my whole Instagram feed is cars. I post cars to my story constantly. So that is on my social media feed, but you wouldn't know it from my LinkedIn feed.
If
So
it's different than LinkedIn, it counts.
Okay, great. So I did it. There we go.
Nice. Brooke, do you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Brooke. I am a director of sales at Ironclad. Very similar to Ryan, my sales career has been pretty standard, starting as a BDR, moving up primarily in new business, AE roles up through the enterprise, and then moved into sales leadership in 2020, February of 2020. So that was interesting timing, and have been building and scaling teams for about 3 years. So ready to go into another year of territory planning, which will be fun. And also similar to Ryan, you would know this if you had me on Instagram. I love wine. I'm from wine country. My partner is a winemaker, so I just optimize for as much free and delicious wine as I can. So I will take all recommendations if anyone else loves a good bottle of wine.
Smart. Kevin, do you want to go?
Yeah, my name's Kevin Davis. I'm the founder and CEO of Boogie Board. I have a very similar career path to these folks. I started as a BDR, came up through account management, direct sales, and also sales leadership, and then pivoted to the operations side where I was really touched by the territory design process, so to speak, and inspired to create a company that tries to solve problems related to it. And then my interesting fact, I'm actually going to go with your icebreaker, Kamala. So we put up, my son was born on October 25th. He's 3 now. My wife is very anti-Halloween. And so what we've decided to do instead is every October 25th on his day, we rear the Christmas tree and decorate the house. And our neighbors were insane. And so your too early comment made me think about that because we are about as you can get.
I totally stuck my foot in my mouth. That's awesome. So I'm Kamala Thompson. You guys will see me around the community a lot. My background is revenue operations for the first 15 years of my career in B2B SaaS. The closest to sales I've gotten is sales engineering, which is still a lot of selling, but more on the technical side. However, moved over to marketing and marketing leadership in 2020 as well. And I figured if you can make the career switch and have it stick, then you're good. So, Kevin, why don't I kick it over to you and we can get going. Again, before we do get started, make sure your chat is set to everyone instead of hosts and panelists. We will be monitoring Q&A and the chat for questions. Kevin, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Kamala. Thanks, RevOps Co-op. Thank you, Brooke and Ryan, for being available today. And of course, everyone who is participating, we appreciate your time. I'm going to pull up some slides to kind of guide us through today, but this was really meant to be a question and answer situation, Ryan, Brooke, and Kamala. That territory design season is upon us. It's a big time for the partnership between operations. And so sales is really the customer of that process, but they don't have the most agency during the process. There can sometimes be conflict between sales and operations. And so today, what we want to do is really explore the sales point of view of territory design, what matters to them, why it matters to them, and hopefully they're willing to be really honest and shocking with us And I know Ryan especially will be. He was in our dry run. And then, yeah, we'll of course see where the conversation goes. I'll throw up a couple of quick slides before we jump in. Kamala, maybe you can just thumbs up that you can see my screen.
Yep.
All right, cool. So, why do we care about territory design? Why is it this incredibly emotional process during which people win trust erodes between the business party? People are mad. They have heard that territories are not right. There's this construct of right or wrong, and territories are certainly not ever right. And of course, they take forever to design. This is some of the feedback here from sellers that we talk to. And so, why is everyone mad? Not only is this a process that encompasses a number of variables, segments, account scoring, ICP criteria, and those things aren't happening in a vacuum. They're changing throughout the process. Our approach to the market is changing. The way that we think about our product is changing. But there's a number of people involved in the process: sales reps, sales managers, sales leaders, solutions engineers, as Kamala mentioned, who are often overlooked. And this process directly impacts their ability to succeed within a company, their ability to provide for their families, and perhaps even their own happiness. If I am really interested in Nike and I get the Nike account, that's a good day for me. If I'm not, and we don't make a product that's good to sell to Nike, that's a bad day for me as a seller. So with that, we're going to go into a few questions with our sales leaders here. And the first thing that we'll ask is, what does sales want to get broadly from territory design? Brooke, maybe you can just talk about, what do you want to get out of this process?
Yeah, I think as a sales rep, sometimes when we're designing territories, we forget how personal it is. So for me, like in my experience as a rep, I want to receive a territory that's thoughtful. And I really view how well designed my territory is as the company's investment in my ability to win and have a great year. And I think remembering that helps us to be more empathetic, because people are always going to react to territories. We put so much time into it, and then we get frustrated when they're frustrated. I had an experience. I was an account executive at a company, and I was handed a territory that was not just limited in geography, where we had barely any customers, but I got a book with a bunch of accounts that barely even had a digital footprint, and I was selling a digital design tool. And that actually led to me leaving the company. I was sort of waiting to see what kind of book I was handed that year, what kind of opportunity I had to run at. And I really looked at the potential juice versus the squeeze, and ended up looking for my next role, because I just realized the opportunity in front of me was not going to be fruitful. And really, for me as a sales leader, I want in territory design influence. I want to be able to guide what we build so that I can believe in it and I can hold it up to my team and say that it's something I'm behind. I want healthy debate. Like, I think the best territory design processes have a little bit of friction, because it means we're being really honest with ourselves. I also want data. So I want the help in making decisions and calls. I have my gut instinct, but I think RevOps has the keys to making data-backed decisions, which is going to help us promote a lot of the downstream impacts we want, particularly around fairness and being able to move efficiently against our territories. And then I want timeliness. Like, I think there's nothing worse than you're at the start of the year and territories aren't rolled out. Reps get anxious, they get demotivated. So I think that's the other piece that's really critical in a territory design process.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The timeliness piece is especially common. What do you do in January, February if you don't even have a book? It's likely that you still have a quota for Q1. So interesting to hear that. And of course, your transition from a rep being directly impacted to now leadership, where you're still directly impacted, but also facilitating that sort of thoughtfulness and emotional impact for others. Really interested to hear about your journey and how you think about the territory design process today.
Sure. I mean, I can't add too much to what Brooke said because it was so comprehensive, but I think that what every sales leader is looking for in territory planning is for everyone to get fed. Like, you want the patches to be equitable, and you want everyone to be able to be successful. You want 100% participation from your team, as much involvement from everyone contributing to the overall quota as possible. And I think she hit on a couple like really important points. And one of the things that I wanted to call out is this idea of like positive friction that she brought up. I think that, she also brought up timeliness. The sales leader always wants like whatever data cut they're looking for like yesterday. And that's probably at times irritating to the people working in ops. And we have to learn patience sometimes, but yeah, we do usually need stuff fast. And the way that this process goes, it sometimes creates a little bit of an adversarial relationship between ops and sales leadership. And, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that like some of that is by design and it's not necessarily a bad thing. We need to be nice to each other and we need to respect each other's interests, but sales leaders are always going to try to build their patch for success. And ops has a comprehensive view of the whole business and understands if like one territory is getting a better cut than somebody else. So we as sales leaders need to understand that. And it's a give and take. And, that's not always fun. But I think that positive friction is not a bad thing. And when we're going through the process, we should just remember that, like when we're getting annoyed with each other, that, positive friction, this is the way it's supposed to go.
Like that. Yeah, it's a very, very adult process. We all need to learn how to disagree, still be friends, but get the job done. Emily, you were shaking your head about some of that.
So I have a question from the audience that's really relevant. And then Kevin, also, you may want to try switching away from your earbuds. You're sounding robotic off and on. So you might want to try that. So I thought this was a great question from BJ. They're asking, what's the best order of operations to help this process go a little smoother? Should we try rolling out the comp plan first, then territories, then account plan? Or is there a certain order that just works better as a business? Do you want to see the territories before you really start working on the comp plans? What's the order that you guys prefer?
I mean, I don't, everywhere is different and it's hard to answer that question in a vacuum, but based on my experience, I would not want to create a quota before the territory was outlined because, depending on how you're incentivizing the reps, you need to understand how much install there is there. If you're not just looking at incremental ARR and there's renewal coming into play, that should affect what their number would be. So, you need to have an understanding of that. So I would start with like territory planning first, and I would come up with the methodology for it, whether it's geography-based, revenue-based, like any sort of industry tier. I would try to make that as fair as I could. And then I'd understand the install base within each patch and the, however you want to look at TAM based on the specific business that you're in. And then I try to create the number. But again, there's exceptions to that, but that's my answer just with, limited information.
So to clarify, I'm hearing you start with the territory design. So you're figuring out how you're breaking up the territories.
Yes.
That helps you dictate how quotas should be divided across the reps. And then that should dictate compensation design.
Right.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you.
Agreed. And I think from a comms perspective, giving the territory first, if you give them their comp plan first without any context of what building blocks they have to get there, you have a way better chance of them spiraling, calling it unfair without context. So giving them the territory, and then I think we'll talk about this later, but helping them understand why that territory is something to be excited about makes the number feel a lot less scary.
Yeah, I echo that. I think, the territory design process is meant to quantify the opportunity of a territory. And so if you don't know that, it's hard to produce a quota relative to that opportunity, relative to other opportunities that other sellers may have. So I think that the former needs to happen first. And so to kind of move to the next question that Brooke was just talking about, first off, just reiterating, the sales POV is of course number one is going to be attainment, right? Like that's what they're trying to solve for. But I think as as Brooke and Ryan both talked about, is there's some other, thoughtful principles around territory design that can be implemented. Efficiency of your reps, as Brooke talked about, the actual growth strategy, as Ryan talked about, facilitating new roles and ramps of those. This is all part of that process. And the last one that Brooke especially touched on is retention. Giving reps accounts in a thoughtful way is a retention exercise and a way of keeping them. And so to talk more about that, we lead into the next question of how do we actually prioritize accounts? Ryan, you were just talking about kind of thinking about your TAM, deciding which accounts to divvy up and how to go after them. So how do you work with operations teams to do this process?
Again, I feel like I'm just like caveating a lot, but it really depends on the account base and the company. But I think that depending on where you are, you've got to start with some basics. And those are usually, it depends on how you have your reps aligned, but it's usually going to be revenue and geography to some degree. That's just what's going to make sense from, travel expense standpoint and lots of other standpoints. But I think that in my experience, it's really important for the leader to have an understanding beforehand. If let's say you have a leader that's covering Southeast and they know what their states are, but they don't know exactly where the revenue band is. And, maybe there's some fluidity in which accounts would be considered in that patch or not. They need to have a good understanding of the install base in that territory. And then they also need to have a good idea of the target accounts based on the technology that you sell. You need to know who's going to be a fit for you. So, for example, if you're selling like some sort of financial software, you're going to know that some of the more financial heavy territories are locked and loaded for that. I think that you coming prepared with some of that information when you meet with the sales ops professional is going to lead to a more productive conversation. I saw a question in the chat about TAM estimation when there's not good third-party data. I mean, that's really hard. And a lot of people just kind of make TAM up. But in my experience, the longer you work somewhere, you start to get a nose for what the TAM specific to your technology set is for specific accounts. Specifically, like you start to understand that for like retail customers, we're selling deals between 100 and 150K and, at this revenue level. And you start to just know that. And, that's part of your job as a leader to have that understanding so that you can go into the planning process with that information. It's a hard question to answer because there's so many specifics that you would need to have. But that's kind of the framework of how I would look at it.
And it's harder for immature companies that
Totally.
they know who they should sell to, but aren't completely sure or have some product limitations that really make it not practical to sell in certain areas. But what I've used in the past, just so people have like a nerdy reference point here, GDP reports and US statistics, Bureau of Statistics, and I'm forgetting the last word, they have by very specific verticals how much money by metro area is coming in. So you can kind of estimate based on that which markets are going to have the heaviest representation. For example, in finance, like they said that the first thing that popped into my head was, New York City, and then Connecticut. And then, like I've been doing this long enough where things just start firing in my brain because I've been staring at it a lot. The other thing that works really well that BJ mentioned is if you know the people with propensity to buy, so you should be analyzing your install base. You should be looking at your install base by different factors. So are there trends by vertical? Are there trends by the kind of technology they have? Are there trends by company size? You should be looking at all of those slices, and you can use tools like builtwith.com or, a lot of the data providers have technology information that you can use to call out how many accounts in this area probably have, not 100%, the technology that is linked to our sales. And then we have a great question. I would love Brooke and Ryan's opinion on how much can we trust a data-driven approach versus sales, like people who have been in the territory and their knowledge. Because I have feelings here too from the other side of the fence, but would love to hear your input.
Do you want to go first, Brooke, or do you want? Okay, I think that it's a hard question. And I err on the side of, a successful and hardworking rep that has boots on the ground is always going to have a better understanding of what is, really happening, because there's so much nuance in each individual like software that it's hard for any sort of like broadly accessible data set to speak to that. But I think you have to use data sets to question the suppositions that the reps come up with and the, preconceived notions about what works. And that, again, is our job as leaders to do that, to go in and kind of be like, okay, I know you said that like retail doesn't work, but I think it might. And let's talk about it. I could be wrong, but let's talk about it. So I think that, nothing can replace experience and boots on the ground and like the feedback that people are getting from the work that they're actually doing with your product. But we need to use the data to question it and to make sure that we're, thinking as broadly as we can.
Yeah, I always thought of it as myth busting. So
Right.
what I see too many companies do is the CEO or founder has a very strong opinion of what we think we do. And then it's my job to actually look at the install base and customer segmentation to figure out how true that's proving out, and then vet it with what the sales reps are saying, because you need both quantitative and qualitative input. Ultimately, the sales leader is probably going to have the last say because they know what's working and what isn't. So somebody asked how relevant customer segmentation or clusters of like customers are in territory design. And I would say it should have everything to do with how you're thinking about segmenting your accounts by rep.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the size of your organization and what you're able to do. But I think that in an ideal state, you would have the ability to do that, because then you have, you can create a playbook that's more persona specific, and that's more effective.
Brooke, I know you had some activities that you take part in with your sales leadership in terms of deal review, ICP. Can you get into some of those? I thought those were really thoughtful as to how you think about your install base.
Yeah, definitely. So what I do an exercise on a quarterly basis and then on an annual basis of looking at the top deals we did in terms of customer spend and figure out what are some of the similarities across those deals. I do this activity rather than sales ops because I do take a lot of the qualitative lens, going all the way back to just prospecting. How did we even get this customer in the door? What do these people look and feel like? What was their trigger point for wanting to talk to us? So I make a spreadsheet. I evangelize that spreadsheet with leadership across ops and sales, where we look at things like industry at a more detailed level. Like something I personally struggle with is some of these third-party tools name industries weird things that don't actually mean much to me. Employee size, triggering critical event that caused them to make the move into buying something. We sell to legal teams, so we look at legal team size. And then I socialize that with ops at the beginning of the territory design process. And I say, what of this can we surface within our CRM? What of this is like gonna be impossible to get a handle on, and we're gonna have to be okay with that being a bit of a question mark? Because that helps me influence the territory design and also helps just bring them a little bit closer to some of the qualitative side of how these deals actually get done beyond just what you can see in a Salesforce report.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. At Boogie Board, we do this all day. We work with companies to view their account list and figure out how to divvy them up based on their kind of customer profiling. And one of the things that we recommend is to think about this as an exercise of focus. It can become really tempting to say, what is our TAM? How many accounts can we sell to? And the answer might be, 700,000. Let's get them all in CRM. Let's get them all perfectly enriched. You might have 100 sales reps. Right. So is it worth it to think about account number 492,000 in going through that process. So some of the things that we recommend is to think really hard about your serviceable addressable market and view this as an exercise of greater precision. You use simple criteria to narrow the list. Brooke, like you just mentioned, legal team size, right? That is a binary thing that if a company doesn't have it, you can dismiss them. And we shouldn't be chasing things that we shouldn't be going after. You can also look at the customer journey to try to figure out what attributes along that path we can identify for accounts that might be interested in working with us. And we can allow our reps some agency in this process by actually allowing them to disqualify accounts throughout the year. I think that's a really important thing. And then the next is to think about this. Think about territory design. There's a question about clusters and segmentation as a manifestation of your ideal customer profiles, right? I think when we start working with companies, they almost always first tell us that you're not going to believe how bad our CRM data is. You're not going to believe it. We're not able to express anything about our customer base. We say, don't worry about it. Like everyone's kind of in this space. There's all these amazing enrichment providers which can do really interesting and cool things. You can now acquire technographic, the information about the legal team. But you need to be focused in this and kind of understand, okay, what are my different customer profiles? How do I build my sales org to rally around them? And thinking about that as an implementation of that strategy. And then the last piece on sort of the partnership between operations and sales that I wanted to talk about is this is like the perfect opportunity for that constructive friction. Sales might think that ops doesn't know because they've never sold. Ops might think sales doesn't know because they can't see all the data, right? Those are the 2 points of view. But the truth is that can both of you talk about who are our top 50 target clients as a business? Because if we can't state that together, that's a real problem. And so we invite you to kind of think about that with your partners and think about this as an exercise of focus. And so as we talk about different types of data that are used to express territories, Ryan, you had talked a little bit about equity before. How do you think about the all too controversial topic of fairness?
Yeah, I mean, I know we kind of got into this in the prep session, but like the concept of absolute fairness in territory design is probably just, fundamentally flawed, because you are never going to get everything to be completely even across the board. It is just not possible. There are too many factors. So I think that you need to be very specific when you go about territory design. And, you need to have some parameters, geography, revenue, that you stick to as much as possible. And that needs to be clearly communicated to the reps, the way that you designed it. This is how we did it. This is the most fair way to do it. And then I think you need to be willing to entertain questions and have conversations about your territory design methodology with the rep. I will say, I had a leader one time that opened up a call to the whole team where we talked about territory design. I don't think that's a good idea. I think, you've got situations where people have different numbers based on the install base that they have in their patches. Like, it's not anybody's business what somebody else's number is. I think that is a private conversation between sales leader and rep. But I think the conversation should happen. I think it's fair for the rep to have questions. I always had questions as a rep, and we need to be prepared to answer them. But if you're clear and upfront about the parameters that you're using for territory design, it just makes it so much easier down the road. If you try to be kind of like wishy-washy about it and like, well, we put some over here and some over there, like people are going to poke holes in that, and you have to be ready for that. And again, it is not a perfect process. We're doing our best here. And a lot of times it's just like coming together at the end of the year and it's chaos. But I think we have to at least start with the, clearest lines of demarcation that we can come up with and go from there.
From an ops standpoint, I think it's an easy trap to fall into to assume that we've designed the territories for an equal chance of hitting your number, when the reality is we need to take qualitative feedback from sales leadership and even marketing. Because as a marketer, I knew if I hadn't been marketing to a specific area or region or sector, and we put a sales rep there, they have such a harder hill to climb because no one knows who we are. And I think something that isn't talked about enough is in underdeveloped territories, or when we're establishing a new market, maybe we should start thinking a little bit more about quota relief. Dare I say it?
I don't
No.
disagree with that. I think, I'm reading Lauren's comment about the new opinion that she's seeing. And I don't think that there's a problem with thinking about who would be successful in what specific area. I just think you have to be careful with this, because you don't want to set up a situation where you are making it locked and loaded for some people and not for others, because then you have a culture problem. And we need as much participation from the whole team as possible, or else things get toxic. So it's tricky.
I agree with that. I think also it's important to take a look in the mirror and think about that. Like, there's always going to be top reps that carry your number. But if it's to the extent that you want to give them an outsized TAM, you have a performance management problem and you need to up level your team. And I think it's really important to like figure out if you have the right team in place to tackle the territories you build. And if you still feel like you want to give uneven territories, you need to make sure comp and quota are equivalent to that. So we've designed territory types. We have varying levels of seniority across our team. And so we shared, like, you're going to have a territory type. You're going to have some stretch accounts in your book. You're going to have a core group of accounts that's relevant to where you've performed, and helping people understand some of that and really striking that balance of transparency versus not. I think finding a way to make it data driven versus like our top performers got the best accounts is a nice way to keep from it getting super personal. And we found like the territory type distribution really helped us in helping people understand what they can expect in their patch.
Yeah, I plus one to that. I think the question sort of said, should you stack the deck to achieve the best results? And I think that the answer is no. You may need to reconfigure the roles in your company to facilitate who can sell to which types of accounts. But the territory design should be directly tied to the function of those roles and the quota that is associated with them. So when we talk about fairness, I think, Ryan was talking about how do you communicate it? And so having some simple reporting and saying, this is how we're designing territories. This is what it means to be fair. It can be really simple things like total number of accounts, account size, technographic scores, whatever it may be. This is that ICP, the ideal customer profile, being manifested into your territory design. So just being clear about this at the front. And then if you want to give reps some agency, send out a survey in October and say which attributes that we have access to do you think that we should sell to? What should we reflect in our ideal customer profile? Gives them some participation in the process, and also covers you a little bit to say, hey, we're not just out here moving accounts around because we want to. And I think you also have to have, as an operations professional, some reporting needs at the ready, right? You need to be able to define that state of the union. Here's how your territory looks in terms of fairness and in terms of those criteria. You also need to have a view available for your reps on a one-on-one basis to clearly say, here's your territory, here's what changed, here's why, and have sort of that thoughtful approach in storytelling. And there's a question here kind of about holdovers. It's toggled away now, but maybe just broadly, Ryan, how do you think about holdover accounts throughout the design process?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a topic, and we've all dealt with it. I think the important thing with holdovers is that the policy, whatever you decide it is, it needs to be uniform and it needs to be documented. You cannot just play favorites and be like, oh, well, they've got this one for 6 months and they've got this one for next quarter. And oh, this one, if it closes in the year, they've got it. Like, that just creates a mess. It's a nightmare from a compensation standpoint. It's impossible to track who gets paid on what. So I think uniformity and documentation are my two themes here, and kind of should be the driving force in policy, because there's going to be exceptions. There's going to be that situation where you agree to the 3 months and then somebody put in a lot of work, or maybe somebody left and somebody ended up picking something back up. And you're going to need to be reasonable about it, but we have to start from a place of uniformity. So yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think creating transparency too and where holds are is really important, because as a rep, you get a new territory, you find out the 3 accounts you're most excited about have holds. I want to know that early on. I also think it's important to put some accountability on the reps before you just give a hold. So having a hold policy that requires what stage the deal is in, we actually require reps to give justification, because I don't want someone sitting on an account because it's a great account if I could get that into the hand of my top performing rep that maybe needs to resell the deal from the bottoms up. So we actually have people submit requests for holds, whether that's a customer into the new year or an open opportunity. And I think that's a really important exercise, just to make sure people are being thoughtful, and it kind of sets the tone of, you don't get to just raise your hand and say something's unfair. You need to critically think about what feedback you're giving as a rep on the team.
You need to critically think about it, and you need to like have some data and evidence to support your position on it. I mean, you're spot on there.
Yeah, it's interesting because one thing that comes up is like, oh, I have this great account with great opportunity. And so in that process, you figure, well, why isn't that opportunity manifesting today, right? It becomes a gut check on what are those top accounts and why are they in existence. And I think there's some practical things that you can think about throughout this. Like, I don't know if anybody who's been in sales has had to send one of the messages that says, hi, I'm Kevin, I'm your new account manager. And it stinks because you don't want to send it. Your customer really doesn't want to receive it. You're going to tell them that you had a knowledge transfer conversation internally, that you know everything about their account. They're not going to believe you. You're going to have an intro discussion to think about it. So we encourage people to think about the actual end client here as well, and the experience that this creates for them, not just the reps. And so as much as you can define this process upstream, figure out which accounts can move and why, not only helps reps in understanding, but designing territories is actually figuring out from a pool of accounts that can move, where should they move? And so it actually makes the math problem of figuring out which accounts should go to which reps a lot simpler. And so one of the things that we kind of brought up a couple of times throughout is just like communication, thoughtfulness. And so, Brooke, you had a lot of good kind of conversation on this in our dry run. Be willing to just open it up to you. How do you see successful communication happening in territory design?
Yes, this is something I'm very passionate about. And I think you're always striking the balance of providing information to the field, giving them a space to give feedback, but also giving guardrails to drive focus. Because if people get to just keep voicing their opinions, they're not spending time ranking their territory and getting account plans in place. So I think it's really important to introduce territories live and walk the team through how you design them live. So some of what we were talking about with educating the field on how we design these territories. Something we also did for my team last year was make reports to help people go rank their territories. So here are the indicators of your accounts that we think are an A. Like, we really gave them the tools to go figure out what their top accounts were fast, which drove them to focus a little more. It got our territories ranked way faster. It also drove activity to our top accounts and created some excitement. Like, I think there's a chance to get people really pumped about their territories and share with them what lessons we learned last year. A good example is we made the call to make territories smaller this year and really try not to put any crap data in people's names. And that was a huge win for the reps. And it built a lot of trust with them for us to say, we really tried to clear out some of that bad data, some of these accounts that simply don't exist. And then the other thing we did that I think was really impactful this year is we actually made a dashboard for territory disputes. So if you see one of your accounts moved and you want to fight for it, you have to put in a deal support request that goes to ops and lands on a dashboard. So it was across the organization with reports for each segment to see what people were requesting, their reason. We required you to provide a data point. If you say this is enterprise, but it's sitting in mid-market, give a proof source of why it's in the wrong segment, and then everybody can see it. So that way it becomes less of hiding in corners and shadows, and it's more an open and honest conversation. That helps drive fairness too, because someone can't just go to the sales ops person they're closest with and say, hey, can you switch it in my name? Because nothing is worse than not knowing what account moves out of your name after you were really excited about it. Like if you as a rep get Nike and then tomorrow it's not in your name, you need to know. So in that dashboard, we have reports of, hey, here's everything that's moved account owners since we carved territories. Here's all of the disputes with their rankings of urgency and all of the reasons why. And then we used Chatter to have those conversations live on that deal support request, which was really, really important. And I think created a lot of visibility and also those guardrails so that people don't keep doing this. We gave a timeline of when you need to give disputes by. And I think that was helping us kind of mix the art and science of the communication portion of territory rollout.
I think
We have we have a really relevant question. Do you mind if I jump in?
Please.
So Morgan asks, how do you consider accounts that have been transitioned multiple times? Is there some kind of limit or, flag if it puts things at higher risk?
So I can go on this one and say, I think you absolutely need to consider it. How you consider it should be based on kind of the customer type. If it's an existing customer, you want to be especially sensitive to this. Your business is going to change. Reps are going to leave and get promoted, and so sometimes their account is going to change hands as well. But we usually recommend a dashboard during the territory design process that indicates how many times or how many account owners or whatever it is that this account has had in the last X amount of years. This is ultimately a customer focused process. And so no matter what's good for the reps or what we feel about our internal roles and structures or policies, at the end of the day, that client and its partnership to your organization is number one. So we absolutely recommend focusing on it and thinking about it rather simply and saying, we should try to have it change hands and experience that consternation as little as possible.
I agree. I think it also depends on what your, the way that you handle existing customers, how that looks. Like, do you have a customer success team also? Like sometimes, unfortunately, we just don't have the option to keep the account rep as static as we would like. And, if we have other people that are servicing the account that we can keep static, that can help us mitigate some of the damage that's done through change. But I like this comment about customer impact being greater than self-interest, because I do think that, kind of using that as a guiding principle is important. I think that they're not like mutually exclusive either. I think when you think about customer impact, your retention is going to be higher and your upsells are going to be higher. So.
Absolutely. Brooke, I had a follow-up question to you on, you mentioned you shrunk books this year and increased some focus on that. One of the pushbacks that we get to that is that, ops feels that if they do that, then sales is going to revolt or feel they have less opportunity. And one of the mechanisms to sort of ease that is by allowing reps to add certain accounts into their name throughout the year. If you go on a target account list model, or disqualify throughout the year. I'm curious if your reps have a book of business that is entirely static, or if there's some dynamism to it.
Yeah, it's definitely dynamic, and we shared that with the team up front. So I think that's another important policy to roll out is what is your territory enhancement policy? I'm so sorry that your team revolted. That sounds terrible. It's so dramatic sometimes. So we came up with a policy for if you do clean out accounts, if you do put something on that dashboard, what does it look like to get your territory enriched? And then also we did like a refresh policy. So at the 6-month mark, my team really runs on a quarterly cadence, so we could do this. At the 6-month mark, what does it look like? How are we going to go ahead and refresh territories? And then the other thing we did to keep people calm is we do have BDRs on house accounts that show intent. So just making sure they know like there's going to be a round robin of accounts as they come in and prove that there's high propensity to buy. And that also sort of quelled some of the concern. But the reality is they weren't going to touch all of their accounts. And what I told my team was, if you show me that you thoughtfully and exhaustively prospected into your entire territory, I am happy to give you more. None of you are doing that. So I just kind of put it back on them and sort of had some real talk, because people are always going to want more. They're not going to do it. And that's okay, but you can't let them push you around so much.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you made so many good points in what you just said, Brooke. Like, I know, like, just the way that I'm wired as like a seller, it's like we're competitive, and you're gonna look for these little things to like grab onto that are a distraction from like actually farming your territory. And I think it's part of a sales leader's job to just kind of like squash that and remove those obstacles and kind of like redirect us back into our patches. And you explained it more eloquently than I did, but yes, I agree.
It's so interesting as we're going along in this conversation. I keep reflecting that there are a lot of things we can do to make the process better, from taking qualitative feedback, analyzing the data. But ultimately, the biggest struggles I've had were with management styles and willingness to work together. So if I had a sales manager tell me I want to be the fun parent and would send me every dispute, you need to get to the point. It takes time to establish trust and credibility in a company, but that's not acceptable. And RevOps needs to be able to say, hey, I'll do my share and I want to work with you, but you need to have the conversation with your sales rep.
Agreed. I mean, it would be really excellent if we could all always have fun conversations, but it is just not reality. And if you're not doing that, someone else is doing it for you. So I don't think that's very fair.
I mean, it happens. New leader, they learn eventually, but
Good.
I think it's also why it's so important when you are presenting territories to have sales leadership take some of the ownership on the comms plan, and it's not just ops presenting, because that changes the tone up front. The reps are going to understand, okay, my sales leader believes in this. This is based on what we actually see in the field. And you need to just have some accountability on your sales leaders and make them feel like co-owners of the process, because you don't want to be the enemy against the united sales front. It's just so unproductive. So, and I think that's also why executive level investment in the plan is very, very important. Like making sure your CRO gives the rubber stamp and communicates that to the front line, second line, third line managers of like, we are all behind this, whether or not you agree with it. It's the plan we landed on. So sort of the, disagree in private and united front in public type thing.
Yeah, you really can't do much if your leaders are saying, well, I didn't agree with it and they rolled it out anyway. There's not much you can do in RevOps to combat that.
Yeah. Yeah, it really needs to be tackled upstream, as you're saying. And so I think they probably should be aware of the consequences, right? Our sales reps are some of our most expensive resources. And if we offer them poor utilization without thoughtfulness to this process, like that's a real issue. And then if you steel man that to the other side and say, well, operations needs to do a better job of making it easy for sales to participate in this process. So, we can't be going into meetings and saying, here's a TAM report with 500,000 accounts and 50 x-axis data points about those accounts. How should we divvy it up? Oh, by the way, they might be changing. Oh, by the way, it might be the end of the year where we're closing deals, right? It's an understanding point of frustration. So, to do that, we recommend some like really just soft project management communication style things, but be really clear about your timelines and your kickoffs. Who's going to be responsible for what? Clearly articulate what the data limitations are. Here's why we might get the wrong technographic once every fifth account. Like it's just the reality of scraping the internet for data. What are our balance goals, right? We tried to define fairness, like let's talk about that upstream, and then have really clear policies and post them to your intranet. And then if you're like Brooke, have an actual dispute dashboard and you get a gold star, because that's awesome. It's really manifested all the way into the day-to-day of your operations. And then even before that, talking about what's on the table when you're designing territories. You can go through the whole exercise of scoring every account in the entire database, or you could say like, we're really not planning on changing much this year. So instead of doing that, maybe our priority is to not change a lot, and we can save a bunch of time on this exercise. So, alignment with your executive group, I couldn't agree more at the onset is extremely important. So I think that was our last question that we had kind of tagged for the group. I'm not sure, Camel, if you're seeing any other in the chat monitoring here that are interesting to dive into.
Yeah, we had Michael ask, how do you think about specialist assignment? And Michael would love to get some clarity on, is this how you're partnering technical sellers, or are you thinking people who are really specialized in selling to a certain profile?
Do you mean like a product line specialist within like a larger org where they might have a generalist and then a specialist? Or I'm not sure I understand the question. Meant product. Okay.
Okay.
So I think that sometimes people try to complicate that, and it really should follow the same parameters as everything else. You got to remember that, I mean, I was a product specialist overlay for a little while, and most of the people that come into that product specialist job, they don't necessarily have a specific technical experience set that differentiates them. They're just focused on one area of the business. And so I think that the way that it is different from the way you would normally address, assignment and account planning is that the TAM becomes even more important because there may be specific product pillars that resonate in different geos. It's like you might not need to go as heavy on finance line specialists, whatever the product is, in the Midwest. And that's where it becomes important. And I think that if you have an overlay model where you have product specialists aligning to generalists, it's probably unreasonable to think that it's a 1-for-1 and that the product specialist coverage should mirror the generalist coverage, because that may not be the way the install base looks, and it may not be the way the TAM looks. So again, it's hard to answer these questions in a vacuum. There's so many specifics, but that's the baseline way I'd approach it.
Yeah, and don't let the system's limitations limit you. Like if you are trying to use one territory team in your CRM, it should really be based on what works as a business. Ideas on best way to get sales reps excited about their book of business. Brooke would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I shared a few of these, but I think the best tactics are, one, explain what you did different from last year. I think people always are grumpy going into territory design. They're going to assume it's the same thing they had last year. So being really clear on your intention behind improving based on last year is number one. And then number two, sharing how you designed, sharing the correlation between book design and what you see across your top customers or your biggest deals, your most successful segments or industries, whatever it might be. And then I think the other thing is, I really liked the exercise of giving people reports to help them surface their top accounts was really great, because I got the first thing they looked at was, oh my gosh, I have XYZ accounts that looks and feels just like our top customers. So I think the best thing you can do is give them the tools to make sense of their territory immediately and direct their eye to the parts of the territory that they should be really, really excited about. And then finally, having sales leadership deliver a lot of that messaging around territory design. I think it's nice for ops to own escalation process, some of the logistics, but for sales leadership to own, here's the conversations we had, here's how we landed on what ICP means for us this year, what books look like for us this year, and this is why, and this is what we think it can unlock for you, is going to be the way to get people super excited.
And I think it's important that ops listens to sales reps who are really loud about things being unfair, and then work not in a sneaky way or a tattletale way with their sales manager and sales enablement. Because a lot of times, not always, but sometimes they're expressing an insecurity on a certain product line or selling into a certain vertical that a good enablement person can help equalize by sharing best practices.
I totally agree. The other role I think sales enablement can really play there is, if we say, so for us, we sell to a lot of sales teams. So if we say we're going all in on the sales use case this year, rolling out a playbook alongside it of, hey, we are industry led this year, here's industry playbooks, and giving people the tools to start prospecting, it can take them away from the like, you kind of freeze and you get analysis paralysis type thing. So rolling out the tooling, not just to find the accounts, but to get into them, is really powerful.
Any other questions? This has been fantastic. Lots of engagement. Any other questions out there? All right. Well, thank you all. I know I've learned some things and I'm going to take away the dispute dashboard. I say there's always that one moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to use that right now. And that was probably it for me, but there were quite a few here. So thank you all so much. Oh, we do have one more great question. How do you celebrate RevOps after territory planning is done? Do you celebrate RevOps? Wine.
You know, I had
Yeah.
a boss that like taught me early to we call them our sales order specialists, which is not directly ops, but he would like send this woman that worked with us chocolates and stuff. And I was like, okay, you know, what is the deal here? And he was like, this is how you treat people that you work with. You let them know that you see what they're doing for you, and you do something outward. You know, if their love language is gifts, do that. Or you say something to their boss, or you put something like in the chat or in Slack. Like, I think that just generally we don't do enough of that sort of thing. And it matters. And of course, I'm like words of affirmation. That's my love language. So of course I'm going to say I want shout outs. But I think that it does matter, and people need to know that you recognize the work that they put in. And unfortunately, sometimes ops, you know, doesn't get the glory that they deserve because they aren't the one that puts, you know, booked, clicks it in Salesforce always. So
I totally agree. The other thing I like that we do is we give them time off. So we give people a heads up, like at the end of the dispute, it's like they're going out of office because you miss out. Like usually start of the year, holidays, they're probably working. Start of the year, that's when sales pauses. Like ops doesn't get that time. So I'd really encourage your execs to set them some mental health days and actually truly let them log off, because you deserve it and you don't want to hear from sales for a few days, which we can understand.
Love
Yeah.
that idea.
I think the only other thing is that sometimes RevOps doesn't have the fund budget. Just remember that if you're a sales leader. So, you know, they don't have the motion of going and you know, buying drinks or doing you know, the long sushi dinners that we all need every once in a while. My only other corny feedback to that question is that territory design is technically never done, but that's not helpful when you're trying to celebrate. So maybe don't think about that.
It's true though. All right. Thank you all for sharing your honest opinions. We love it. And everyone have an excellent day. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.